right, welcome into Paradise, Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses that they are providing a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a witness in the 1970s and 80s. As I do, there's some trigger warnings. Try to have a little bit of fun here. Try to be honest and transparent. Try to heal. Sarcasm, humor, experiences, and anecdotes never meant to offend. And you will note, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, almost everything in this show comes right from your Watchtower library. You know, the one online that you can access as well. So please take note. There may be nothing more damaging to any type of relationship than a lack of accountability. Not taking accountability for our actions tends to lead to major problems in life, at work, in our romantic relationships, even in our friendships. And while it can be uncomfortable to take accountability for something that bothered or hurt someone else, it's absolutely essential to repairing and maintaining all relationships. If you cheat in a romantic relationship and proceed to blame the innocent spouse for some deficiency, their lack of attention, or something else, it usually doesn't end very well. It usually ends in a divorce or a breakup, and almost always an avalanche of pain. How do you feel about a person that denies or refuses to take accountability or plays the blame game for something that they did? How do you feel about them? If you're a well-read Jehovah's Witness, you might even remember that the Bible itself has a few things to say about accountability. For example, an all-time personal favorite from the warm and fuzzy Apostle Paul, he had this to say at Romans chapter 14, verses 10 and 12 of the New World Translation, where he said, quote, "We shall all stand before the judgment seat of God. So then, each of us will render an account for himself to God." End quote. That is all about taking accountability for what we say or do. And it looks like the God that sometimes allows his organization to mislead people for decades, even getting people killed, is going to get personally involved in calling people to accountability. And oh, the irony. From the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses themselves, you know, God's guys, lifted right out of their Watchtower library in the article from the Watchtower of August 15th, 1963, pages 495 through 501, the series Each One Will Render an Account. It looks like the guys that are now in heaven, feeding the 11 guys currently in upstate New York, well, even they knew accountability was a big deal when they said in paragraph 2 on pages 496 and 497 the following, quote, "Whether done in public or in secret, we will render an account for our deeds, and all that we do is openly exposed to the eyes of the judge of the universe. We must render an account as to how well we have measured up to the commandments of God. The conclusion of the matter, everything having been heard, is fear the true God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole obligation of man. For the true God himself will bring every sort of work into the judgment in relation to every hidden thing as to whether it is good or bad." End quote. And before your children, or you kids, you little people think that you're off the hook from this thing called accountability. Doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter. If you think you're off the hook based on your age or your lack of life experience, well, The leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses want you to know you had better think again. From that same August 15th Watchtower in 1963, we are told, quote, children themselves are not entirely free from rendering an account to God. It is true that parents are primarily responsible before God for their children. Thus, if one of two parents is a worshiper of Jehovah, then any children born to this union are holy in God's eyes. But it is well to keep in mind that the Bible record shows that God has not closed his eyes to the wrongdoings of children. At one time, Jehovah executed a jeering gang of 42 children by means of 2 she-bears because these delinquents showed disrespect for Jehovah's prophet. End quote. Execute those kids, God of love. That's right, kids. Don't forget that Jehovah has no problem killing you, and not just killing you, but in the most brutal of ways. And well, even the animals get involved to tear you limb from limb for lacking at a bald guy. And hey, listen, if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness now cowering under your bed as a grown adult because you remember drawing mustaches on Watchtower illustrations, or you had your Watchtower study out on a Sunday and you drew the apostles pooping once, or you laughed at the hypocrisy of a fat-ass elder giving a talk on self-control from the stage, I am going to ask you to come out from under that bed. It's not likely that Jehovah is sending a couple of, she-bears to rip you to pieces in 2026. But doesn't that reminder make for a great Watchtower article? That crazy Jehovah, he's at it again. King David might be sleeping with underage virgin girls, and you remember that guy Lot. Well, he is sleeping with his own daughters, but those two guys, they'll be resurrected onto a paradise earth. As for the 42 kids that laughed at a guy's hairline, well, if they're resurrected, they will no doubt have to heal from PTSD from their experience. Imagine those resurrected 42-year-old kids, 42 kids, not 42-year-old, who were ripped limb from limb by bears. Jehovah wanted to make sure we knew about it in the Bible. Imagine them jumping when they see the bears roaming free all over the place on the paradise earth. There's going to be some healing that's required. And they may have a few questions for Jehovah, don't you think? But here we are in paradise again this week. And thank you, faithful slave. You're very discreet indeed for a reminder on accountability, including little kids at the Kingdom Hall. That accountability is a real thing. And if you think you can dodge it, well, Jehovah in the past has sent animals to rip children apart. The God of love just doing his thing. And for a Jehovah's Witness here bravely listening, and look, I can't resist sharing this. This article from the Watchtower in 63 continues to address children, not adults, the kids, with the following in paragraph 3, where it says, quote, "It is well for parents then to instruct their children that they are accountable to God, just as the parents themselves must render an account to God. In ancient Israel, children who became incorrigible delinquents suffered according to the will of God by being grounded? No. By getting a spanking? No. By being put to death. In case a man happens to have a son who is stubborn and rebellious, I don't know if you've met teenagers, back to the quote, he not listening to the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and they have corrected him, but he will not listen to them. his father and his mother must also take hold of him and bring him out to the older men of his city and to the gate of his place, and they must ground him. No, and they must say to the older men of this city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He is not listening to our voice, but being a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city must ground him, put him in the corner, take away his car. Nope. Back to the quote in the Watchtower, then all the men of this city must stone him with stones, and he must die. You must clear away what is bad from your midst. The quote continues, today, God still holds children accountable for being obedient to their parents in union with the Lord. As Ephesians 6:1-3 shows, children, be obedient to your parents in union with the Lord, for this is righteous. Honor your father and your mother, which is the first command with a promise, that it may go well with you and you may endure a long time on the earth. End quote. And there it is. The wisdom, the paradise-like conditions of the faithful and discreet slave, according to the August 15th, 1963 Watchtower, on all things accountability. But especially pay attention that even young people, children, are to pay attention and obey. If you disobey mom and dad, just be glad you're a kid that was born sometime in the recent last century or in 2026. Because Jehovah, the same guy you go to the Kingdom Hall to pray to, he used to demand accountability by telling your parents to take you out in the front yard, gather up your friends, pick up some rocks, and throw them at your skull. They needed to kill you. In fact, it said, you must die. You ate that whole pizza, or you stole dad's leftovers, or you got into the liquor cabinet, or maybe you saw something on the internet you shouldn't see. Out into the front yard you were taken, where your final moments were the people that loved you most and the congregation successfully caving your head in. Isn't this nice? Welcome to Jehovah, his Bible, his organization on earth, and all things accountability. Why am I discussing accountability today? Well, listen, folks, and especially young people. I stumbled into yet another example of the governing body showing me that ironically, they don't seem to understand this concept of accountability. And I was dwelling on this subject because the 11 men that make up the faithful and discreet slave in 2026 were pitching total dishonesty, total subversion, and a gross lack of their own accountability this past week during the Sunday meeting, where they studied the article from the May 2026 Watchtower Study Edition titled, Make Wise Decisions Regarding Additional Education. And as always, please bear with me as I throw a bunch of my own jumbled thoughts on this subject at you. But here we go again. Higher education, college, university, additional training. Put whatever phrase you want to the subject. A subject that I have done, I think, a fairly good job of discussing on this show in the past, and that they have done a fairly good job of rebranding to younger generations of Jehovah's Witnesses today. But again, I'm going to say it because it's a bitter pill for me. Make no mistake, this is where they expose their lack of accountability. In a study article that made me want to punch the walls, we find the 11 kings doing what they do best: revisionist history. A history that has damaged millions of lives, mostly from my generation or older. And yeah, I admit it, I've got an axe to grind. Why? Because I've seen the comments on social media from current Jehovah's Witnesses making absolutely delusional claims that their organization has always been open to higher education, that it's a conscience matter. And again, I have to admit, I feel like they've done a halfway successful job of covering over their lies and deceptions of the past and rebranding the subject of higher education to today's Jehovah's Witnesses. It's insane. Because as you will see, you can access all of their comments from the past within minutes to see that they lack accountability. You might remember the governing body update number 5, hosted by my favorite king, maybe my favorite, I don't know, David Splain. What a gem he is. In 2025, he hosted governing body update number 5, and they did a complete reversal on the subject of higher education, going to college, making the decision that going to college or university was now a personal decision. And it was just weeks, yes, weeks, literal days, after a leaked video online from Bethel showed an elder training video where a body of elders were removing their fellow elder because he did the unthinkable. He allowed his daughters to go to college, even though they're adults, never mind. They are so incredibly pathetic at covering their own lies that they do it simultaneously. Much like their current Bible study program that you can access at this very moment, showing you that storing your own blood is a sin. It is in their current Bible study program. Even as they at the same moment marched on camera and tell you storing your own blood is up to you. They're kind of sloppy. And if you can't see what's going on here, allow me to share. This is how a corporation avoids accountability. And it's also how they attempt to win lawsuits. It's a little thing called plausible deniability. It's very real. And these men employed by the God that cannot lie, remember, their boss cannot lie, they then take to print, video, movies, and more, doing whatever it takes, including lying, to cover their stupidity of the past. Despite them suddenly allowing Jehovah's Witnesses to make up their own minds about going to college, imagine that, check out what they did in this Watchtower study article of just last week about the same subject on education. The entire article is clearly targeted at young people, those who have just graduated high school and might be considering additional education. Do you want proof? Well, it's pretty easy to see, and it's on the website. The opening song is Song 133, and it's titled, Worship Jehovah During Youth. There it is. And we all know that isn't possible at the frat house or the kegger party you might attend in college. And it begins with the theme scripture from Proverbs 14:15 of the New World Translation, where it says, quote, "The shrewd one ponders each step." Again, the 11 men in New York will tell you how to walk. And that is followed by the comment, again, go see for yourself on the only website powered by Holy Spirit, quote, "Focus. Factors and Bible principles to consider when deciding whether to obtain additional education," end quote. We got a scripture, we got a focus. And this is what they studied last Sunday. You might be thinking, well, wait a minute. the Bible has a lot to say about universities and factors in higher education. I'm sure you already know that. It's just a given, right? I still find myself laughing when I picture how the apostles must have hazed Matthias when they let him in the frat house after Judas got kicked out and, got caught up in his necktie and stuff. Something that's no longer required for JW men. So, no risk there. Most will see this article and they're just going to blow by it like all Jehovah's Witnesses do, without a second thought to how it obliterates this organization's accountability on everything it has ever said and enforced on higher education. Mostly because younger Jehovah's Witnesses have no idea how adamant they were that none of us get an education. None of us. So I dove right into this article, only to just start laughing as I do. All you have to do is read paragraph 1, and if you're from Generation X or even a millennial, you immediately spot the lying, the shaming, and the zero accountability in printed form for the very core concepts of their own religion. They literally admit they've been lying to Jehovah's Witnesses all along in just a few sentences to start the study. See if you can pick up on what they are implying in paragraph 1, where they say, quote, "What type of work would you like to do when you grow up?" If you are young, you have likely been asked this question many times. The best career that you could choose is a career in full-time service. However, you will also need to support yourself financially. No doubt, you have thought about what secular work you could do in the future. End quote. Did you spot a few things? Paragraph 1, last Sunday's study. Let's review the psychological ploys of the governing body found in paragraph 1. In just 4 simple sentences that most Jehovah's Witnesses will completely miss, the organization that claims they are a bastion of honesty, representing the holy interests of Jesus Christ and his dad, expose themselves with their own brand of shaming and gaslighting. So let's review. They start this article, paragraph 1, on education with a very ironic question. You remember, quote, "What type of work would you like to do when you grow up?" If you're young, you've likely been asked this question many times. End quote. Wait a minute, what? Grow up? I can only speak for my generation. I graduated high school in 1985, and I still remember the look on my guidance counselor's face when I told her I had no interest in going to college because, you see, I was going to be living in a paradise soon. I was going to be hanging out with my guy Noah, asking him questions about birth control and stuff. But while I have an axe to grind and I fully admit it, by the way, the attempt to insult your intelligence is truly something to behold. For example, why would a Jehovah's Witness youth be planning ahead for a career when they grow up, as it says in paragraph 1? What is all this talk about a younger person liking any job in a system ruled by Satan the devil and a system of things that is going to be destroyed any second now? This organization, going back decades into the last century, has long coerced Jehovah's Witnesses into staying uneducated. Careers were openly vilified in print. Goals, objectives, wants, desires about anything about what we do when we grow up was completely tossed in the garbage can via talks, conventions, dramas, videos, and endless publications. It's even in their cartoons, folks. What do I want to do when I grow up in paragraph 1 last Sunday? Well, hell, Most of us gave up on the dream of doing anything when we grown up because it upset Jehovah. Remember? He didn't want us thinking like that. You don't remember this? You don't remember if you're we never said that. It's a conscience matter what you want to do when you grow up. Are you sure? Let me remind you what we were force-fed. From the Watchtower of 2008, April 15th, page 4, quote, rather than looking to the advanced educational systems of this world for security, a Christian trusts in Jehovah, end quote. Not much about what I want to do when I grow up there. From the June 15th, 2011 Watchtower, page 31, under the subheading Higher Education, quote, do you need to strengthen your confidence in Jehovah's ability to provide for you? End quote. Not much about what I want to do when I grow up. From the Watchtower of June 15th, 2012, page 23, quote, no doubt, school counselors sincerely believe that it is in your best interest to pursue higher education and to plan for a secular career. Yet their confidence lies in a social and financial system that has no lasting future, end quote. I'm not thinking about what I want to do when I grow up. Jehovah's going to destroy it all. And then finally, going back another decade or so from the Awake, actually two, from the Awake of June 8th, 1971, pages 3 through 8, we are told, quote, so by guiding their children away from the so-called higher education of today, these parents spare their children exposure to an increasingly demoralizing atmosphere, and at the same time prepare them for life in a new system as well. End quote. Yeah. Paragraph 1, last Sunday, July 2025 or 26. What do I want to do when I grow up? And then, because I'm always looking for an excuse to slip this one in, you'll recognize it if you've ever been a witness, an all-time favorite that simply proves the governing body doesn't understand the concept of accountability or even honesty. From the Awake of May 22nd, 1969, on page 15, the same faithful and discreet slave that works for the honest God Jehovah said this, quote, if you are a young person, you also need to face the fact that you will never grow old in this present system of things. Why not? Because all the evidence in fulfillment of Bible prophecy indicates that this corrupt system is due to end in a few years. Of the generation that observed the beginning of the last days in 1914, Jesus foretold, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things occur. Matthew 24:34. Therefore, as a young person, you will never fulfill any career that this system offers. If you are in high school and thinking about a college education, it means at least 4, perhaps even 6 or 8 more years to graduate into a specialized career. But where will this system of things be by that time? It will be well on the way toward its finish, if not actually gone. End quote. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, speaking on behalf of Jehovah and his son Jesus. So in paragraph 1, last Sunday's Watchtower story, what do I want to do when I grow up? You encourage me to never think about that, because you fellas would be up in the clouds at that time looking down on us, eating our fruit bowls. The generation of 1914 would never pass away before I was sitting around the campfire singing psalms with Noah, David, and Lot. Ew. So I never contemplated what I wanted to do when I grow up. And how awkward it all is, considering that the generation of 1914 is now 112 years old, or in actuality, they're all dead. And by the way, that favorite one I just read from the May 1969 Awake, I was a whopping 2 years old when you printed that one. I am now 58. And would you look at that? You claimed I would never get old in this system of things. And my hair is completely white. To even print a Watchtower study article in 2026, like the one they studied last week, without addressing the last century of these men shitting on higher education is completely beyond dishonest. There is zero accountability for the dishonesty. They're rubbing our faces in it. And folks, I'm just getting started this week. The first paragraph in last week's study article continues in the next sentence. You might remember, I'm just kind of taking it apart here with the following comment, quote, "The best career that you could choose is a career in full-time service." End quote. Just kind of slid it in there. And there it is. We go from lying in the first sentence of paragraph 1 to the shaming they do in the second sentence of paragraph 1. Even as one of their own, Jody Jedley of the governing body can be found tonight on YouTube pushing his courses for becoming a real estate investor. College or additional higher education. He is also very likely hovering over the writing committee, telling young Jehovah's Witnesses that if they do choose the career they would like to do when they get older, they've clearly made an inferior choice because they really should be dedicating their lives to him and his 10 best friends by standing out front of a book cart at your local farmer's market. Now there is a career you should really want to do. Sure, they've suddenly decided it was a personal decision. It's all part of the rebrand of this incomplete and utter destruction of what this religion has been. It's a rebrand, folks, in 2026. It's not for you and me. They got us. They screwed our lives over. They want the younger people now, which is the only reason I do this podcast, to save them. But make no mistake, any decision that you make as a young person to pursue higher education and a career you want to do that isn't full-time service to them, well, let's be honest, paragraph 1 last Sunday, you're making an inferior choice about your life. And they just reminded you, low-key taking a shot during paragraph 1 of the Watchtower study. None of this is new. Those of us that have survived the past, we recognize it. We've seen it all before. This isn't new messaging. Pursuing college over a life of borderline poverty in service to this publishing real estate movie company, this has been vilified for decades, folks. Decades! I'm pulling from their library. It has nothing to do with apostates. It's in print, it's in videos, it's in their library. You remember the library run by Holy Spirit. Elders have been removed for allowing their kids to attend college instead of being pioneers. Young people have gotten a side eye at congregation meetings for going to university. Elders have refused to let grown men run microphones or be parking attendants because those young men chose to go to school instead of slave for them long into their futures. Gossip has run rampant throughout congregations, questioning people's character for wanting to get an education. I mean, how did Jehovah's Witnesses develop such a negative view of higher education? Why are they doing this study last week? I mean, gee, I wonder. Because, folks, this is so easily traceable, their lack of accountability. You can go back as early as 1910. In print, Chuck Taze Russell was poo-pooing an education for God's people. He got in on it early. From the book What Pastor Russell Said, written by Leslie W. Jones in Chicago, 1917, from his live meetings where she recorded them in print, pages Q57 and Q58 are this, quote, question, 1910. Should the saints go right on and educate their children in this day for earthly positions, knowing they will not get into those positions in this age? Will such an education, college or university, be of value in the millennium? Answer in print from Chuck Taze Russell, quote, I advise all Christians not to send their children to colleges or universities. For if they do, they will risk a great deal through infidelity and unbelief. And they will be doing their children a positive injury. I think of a dear Christian brother who inquired of me about 5 years ago in regarding to sending his daughter to a female college. I advised to the contrary, stating that she would probably lose her faith in the Bible. My advice is then give your children an education up to the public school limit, not even attempting to take them through high school, for they get plenty of higher criticism in the high schools, and it will not be long before they have it in the common schools also. End quote. There it is from Chuck Taze Russell, the faithful and discreet slave of his time, God's first and best chosen guy to kick off Jehovah's Witnesses, and also a guy who claimed he was the Laodicean messenger prophesied in Revelation. Not only was college vilified, that it would injure your children, he even said not to let them finish high school, something you can see Jehovah's Witnesses doing in 2026 by putting their kids through homeschooling. Education has always been vilified by this organization. Always. Going back to 1910 from the guy they continue to hold in high esteem that's now looking on in heaven, or so we allegedly are told. Another couple of examples in modern times about what they've said about higher education from the Watchtower, April 15th, 2008, page 4, quote, what though of higher education received in a college or a university? This is widely viewed as vital to success. Yet many who pursue such education end up with their minds filled with harmful propaganda. Such education wastes valuable youthful years that could be best used in Jehovah's service. Perhaps it is not surprising that in lands where many have received such an education, belief in God is at an all-time low, end quote. How about the Awake of May 8th, 1989, page 13, quote, a university degree may or may not improve your employment prospects. But one fact is indisputable. The time left is reduced. For all its presumed benefits, would 4 years or more in a university be the best use of that remaining time? End quote. All this talk about time and only a couple years left from 1989. The Awake of May 8th. All the way back to 1910, folks. Those Jehovah's Witnesses who come at me on TikTok or Instagram, please seek help. This has always been their stand on higher education. And this is just a reminder that these are nothing but a handful of the many, many, many comments, articles, and more that I found online today in their own Watchtower library. In fact, it's on the same website as this May 2026 Watchtower study that you all just reviewed last Sunday at the Kingdom Hall. Same site, same exact website. I want to say that I'm not going to cover this entire study article from last Sunday because it's nothing new for most of us. They've simply changed the packaging while releasing themselves of any accountability for how their people think. You see this in young people, again, mostly on social media. That's where we're at in this generation. They pipe off and spout off on social media, on Reddit and TikTok, where they say, this isn't a change. It's always been a conscience matter. Yeah. You see, generations of Jehovah's Witnesses, this guy included, have indeed grown old in this world. And yeah, full transparency, we hold a lot of resentment for being the kind of good people who obeyed these guys and their negative commentary on education. And remember, as Jeffrey Winder said on camera, feel free to go to that same website, they aren't embarrassed about doing it, nor do they feel they need to have an apology for getting it all wrong. It's your life. Big shrugs here. They just kind of shrug. Yeah, just shrugs. You made the decision not to go to school, even if they spent meetings and publications and hours and decades and conventions and blah, blah, blah to shame you and gaslight you if you wanted to have a career or go to school. They did it all so that you would see it their way and dedicate your life to full-time service to Jehovah, which is, of course, service to the organization. Even as the May 2026 Watchtower study article continues for 18 more grueling, mind-bending paragraphs, and is your typical question and answer that we are all familiar with, featured in Kingdom Halls on Sundays, you can read this article in minutes, and you will, yes, you will pick up on this simple fact. They're not saying anything new. It's the same messaging. They simply repackaged their shaming and gaslighting by asking question after question that looks eerily like past Watchtower study articles, which we studied during my time as a young person, as well as the millions who came before me and my generation. It's nothing more than mind control and emotional warfare to trap the most valuable assets sitting in their kingdom halls tonight. What are those assets? Young people. Young people. Youths. Kids. That's their most valuable asset, people. If you're a young person, it isn't me. It isn't the vast majority of people that listen to my silly podcast. It's you young people. That's what they want. They already got me. They already got most of us. But this kind of messaging, repackaged and with a little softer edge on it, makes it look like, well, it's your decision. That's not your decision, folks. The whole article vilifies higher education, and by the second sentence in 18 paragraphs of this article last Sunday, it says your best choice is still service to them. They just got to slide it in there. Articles like this in the modern era for Jehovah's Witnesses are printed and studied to create what I call touchstones for the modern day governing body. You see, times have changed for these guys. And should they ever find themselves in one of the world's many courts of laws or inquiries or commissions or in front of a camera being questioned about their stance on higher education, they will point back at this article in the May 2026 Watchtower that they studied last Sunday, and they will claim it's a conscience matter. See? They are never accountable for anything that happens to any Jehovah's Witness. As you read through the remaining paragraphs of this touchstone article, you will notice the patterns, the questions, the inferences, all of it. They follow a tired script that they've been using on Jehovah's Witnesses since 1910. They most certainly do not want Jehovah's Witnesses to get an education. But they also do not want to be held responsible for where that inevitably leads a person. They want you to believe it was always your decision. Each paragraph of this thing had me laughing. But I'm going to pull out a few of my favorites. As always, please go read it for yourself. Paragraphs 3 and 4 last Sunday have a couple of really special highlights that I've got to believe flew right under the radar. I thankfully wasn't drinking coffee when I read paragraph 3, saving my nose and my computer monitor. But isn't this special? Paragraph 3, friends, quote, "In some places, a person can earn an adequate living without further education. In other places, additional education may help someone find employment that pays better or has better hours. For a Christian, this could allow him, big asterisk, in paragraph, in print, back to the quote, to spend more time in the preaching work or in other theocratic activities. Yet additional education requires sacrifices and can present a Christian with certain challenges." End quote. We see what you did there, governing body. You're a witness. You might go to school, but it's obviously not the best decision. It's not cool because, you see, it takes away from preaching and stuff. But what you don't see, unless you go read it, which I always encourage you to do on the website, is that big asterisk in the paragraph, right after the comment, quote, "For a Christian, this could allow him," asterisk, end quote. Well, as you might imagine, I clicked on the asterisk, and well, thank Jehovah above. Isn't it nice that the asterisk says, quote, "This also applies to sisters," end quote. Well, okay. You see, I've got a vagina, and I wasn't sure if this was just for the people with penises or I got to be a part of this. Thank you for throwing the ladies a bone, guys. Thank you, governing body, for remembering the ladies. Isn't it nice that women can also decide whether they would like to be educated or not? That is so kind of them. And when you consider that it's women that do the bulk of the drudgery in this organization, including their all-famous preaching work, I gotta think this was really noble to include a little asterisk that you just kind of hid in the paragraph for the ladies. Instead of just using a pronoun like her, we can't have that after all, no pronouns. I'm sure the Apostle Paul is in heaven tonight, smiling big up there. We gave them their own asterisk. So ladies, just know that according to the faithful slave last Sunday, you too get to decide if you want to make the inferior choice of going to school, or you want to show your real, true love for Jehovah by bypassing college and managing some of their book carts. You know, with an occasional break in book cart action to clean the Kingdom Hall toilets. Those rascally kings doing what they do. Thanks for the asterisk for the ladies. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. Just a reminder for those who don't know Jehovah's Witnesses, no women are allowed to work on the writing committee. All men. What a shocker. But on to paragraph 4 of last Sunday's article, which I would like to especially call out for any JW apologists, current Jehovah's Witness listening, or any other people who try to stay rooted in reality. Because apparently the writing committee just knew there would be some smart-ass baptized Jehovah's Witness that would actually take the time to open up their Watchtower library and find their long history of comments condemning higher education. How do I know they knew that, well, somebody's going to hold our hand to the fire with this stuff? Well, behold, paragraph 4 last Sunday says this, quote, "The Bible says that each person must carry his own load of responsibility. Thus, each adult Christian must make his or her own decision about whether to obtain additional education." There's another one. Big giant asterisk. In 2 asterisks back to back, paragraph 3 and 4. Yeah, asterisk. Back to the quote in the paragraph. Parents are also responsible for decisions regarding their young child's education, and their guidance can prepare their children to make wise decisions about education once he is an adult. End quote. Wow. Oh, yes. The low-key shaming, if you as a witness choose higher education, is still found in every paragraph of this article. You can do it, but you're not being your best version of you. But aside from that, there is something really special in paragraph 4. Again, you might miss it because it's hidden by a subtle asterisk after the sentence, quote, "Thus each adult Christian must make his or her own decision about whether to obtain additional education," end quote. There's their disclaimer. There's the big new light that David Splain gave us in 2025. It's up to you guys. It's up to you guys. We cannot be held accountable for what happens either way. We're just speaking for Jehovah and stuff. Okay? But for me, I thought, oh my goodness, back-to-back asterisks, paragraphs 3 and 4. But folks, I encourage every human being, especially those smartasses among Jehovah's Witnesses that actually get into the library and actually study, to please go click on the asterisk in paragraph 4, because it's special. The asterisk says this, quote, "In the past, our publications have discouraged Christians from obtaining certain types of additional education. For example, the article Parents, What Future Do You Want for Your Children?, published in the October 1st, 2005 issue of the Watchtower, commented on the dangers associated with higher education. While these dangers still exist, deciding whether to obtain additional education is a personal matter. Each Christian, and in the case of young children, each family head, should prayerfully consider Bible principles and the unique factors involved with a certain educational program before making a decision. No Christian, including elders, should judge a fellow Christian's personal decision on this matter." End quote. And there it is, the asterisk. No, something as important as this was not its own paragraph last Sunday. It wasn't reviewed by the congregation. It was an asterisk. Because the 11 men in upstate New York have perfected the art of the news dump. You wait until everyone is distracted. Most people are asleep or they're looking at their phones. Then you slide in a comment where you openly admit that you've always discouraged higher education in the past. And now, in order to release you 11 men from any accountability moving forward, you tell Jehovah's Witnesses that they can now make their own decision about college, and even the elders need to shut their mouths about it. It's a lot like that tag on the bottom of your mattress. Go ahead and lift your mattress tonight. It's just a teeny weeny disclaimer that they have always discouraged education. But now, in 2026, last Sunday, they're going to kind of back off a bit And all of this by means of an asterisk, a news dump in paragraph 4. And I want to say, I highly recommend that you bookmark this little asterisk to show the JW apologists who continue to post on social media, including Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, that it's always just been a conscience matter and it's no big deal at all, folks. It's not new light. It's no big deal. Even then, they will probably claim this asterisk that is, in their publication is the work of apostates and it's probably AI or something. They're not big, Jehovah's Witnesses, that is, on actually studying or reading their own library. They kind of tend to stay away from it. And imagine burying this comment in an asterisk during the most important meeting for Jehovah's Witnesses, which is the Watchtower study every week. But it's not about helping people, folks. It's about creating a touchstone that the governing body can point to later. They did it in the asterisk. With all those that accept their shaming and their gaslighting and obey them and don't get that education, when they end up old and uneducated and without retirement, looking them in the eye at that point and telling them, well, we didn't tell you to do that. It was your decision all along. Remember the Watchtower of May 2026, paragraph 4, asterisk? Remember that? We didn't force you to not get educated. We just shamed you and gaslit you. You seriously can't make this stuff up. And while I recognize the mental prison Jehovah's Witnesses live in, because I lived in it too, this is shocking once your brain is free. It's easier for those of us that are broken free, and we want some magic formula or bullet that wakes up you young people right now so that you don't end up like us. I wish I knew what it was. I'm doing my best here in this podcast. That's all I got. They continue to target you people. You're the future of this organization, and this crap is destroying your life. It's destroying your lives. How about just a few more highlights from this illustrious study article last week? And I want to call out this one because I'm going to prove that the script hasn't changed on higher education. It's the same script. They simply added some asterisks so they can shirk any of their own responsibility. And my God, we're down to paragraph 7 last Sunday, and here's the proof, where we read, quote, if you are thinking of obtaining further education, a key question to ask yourself is, why do I want to obtain this form of education? Many people pursue education so that they can get a job that they will enjoy or one that pays better. Are these motives wrong? Not necessarily. However, the Bible warns us of the dangers of materialism and of seeking security in this system of things. If your motive is to obtain wealth or prestige, not only might you be left feeling empty, but you could also drift away from Jehovah. End quote. Yes. Do you want to go to college? Do you want to better yourself? Oddly enough, you remember paragraph 1 says, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Paragraph 7 says, hey, whatever it is you're thinking about what you want to do when you grow up, you clearly are materialistic. Just paragraphs from each other, folks. These guys aren't the best. They're not the sharpest, okay? At the end of the day, if you want to go to get a higher education, you're probably greedy. And the very God that will provide for you in any circumstance is also the same God that will let you drift away from him if you go to college. I don't know. It's right there in the paragraph. Don't let your brain cells fire. Not if you're a Jehovah's Witness. I'm going to drift away from Jehovah because I took a night class. I want to be an accountant. I don't know. Look, most people just don't want to eat top ramen and pizza pockets for the rest of their life, folks. Okay? Does that make me materialistic because I need an education so I can support myself? Yeah. Paragraph 7, that's how they reason with Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how they do it. Young people, please wake up. What's so ironic about a paragraph 7 from last Sunday is that this paragraph could have been written decades ago. In fact, it was written decades ago from the Watchtower of February 1st, 1967, page 76. We're told, quote, rather than being content with sustenance and covering, as well as top ramen and pizza pockets, quote, those who devote themselves to getting higher education usually want to be able to enjoy the rest of the things that money can buy. End quote. 1967 looks a lot like paragraph 7 from last Sunday, 2026. You just want to feed yourself. You don't want to wear the same pair of underwear for 30 years. How dare you? You clearly are materialistic. Wow, maybe this is a coincidence that they're, shaming us into believing we're materialistic if I want to go to college. Well, think again. From the June 15th, 2011 Watchtower, page 32, quote, higher education. Jesus warned against seeking your own glory, end quote. Yeah. Do you guys remember that young lady who graduated from Notre Dame in 1978? Do you remember her? Yeah, no one else does because there's no glory. She's probably a grandmother and she's just enjoying her life, but she wanted to go to Notre Dame because she was seeking her own glory, according to the Watchtower of 2011. Maybe that's just a coincidence, Stacy. Paragraph 7, wow, these all sound the same. They sure do. From the Watchtower of June 2019, page 7, quote, she admits, studying for my courses took so much time and effort that I was too busy to linger in prayer to Jehovah the way I used to, too exhausted to enjoy Bible discussions with others, and too tired to prepare well for the meetings. Thankfully, once I realized that being immersed in higher education was damaging my relationship with Jehovah, I knew I had to stop. And I did. End quote. Just went to school a few hours a day. It was destroying her relationship with Jehovah because she had to think about something else besides the governing body. There it is. Young people, please. Same script, different years. But now, as of last Sunday, you've got a couple of asterisks in paragraph 3 and 4 and paragraph 7. Not a damn thing, including the messaging, has changed. They just try to be more subtle, an asterisk here or there, so that neither they nor even the elders in kingdom halls all across this world are responsible when you end up elderly, without an education, without a good job, without any money. They don't want to be accountable. They want you to believe that you made the choice, even though you fed your mind on their material, shaming you for wanting to be better educated. But there did seem to be one thing noticeably missing that was almost always part of their script on higher education back in the day, back for my generation. I was like, I scanned it, I read that, I think, wow, one thing is really missing. What was that thing? They seem to downplay how it's actually Satan the devil that runs the universities all over this planet. Yeah, they used to hit us with it all the time. Satan, you see, was also the dean of education at every college back in the day. In just 2019, the governing body was going out of their way to tell Jehovah's Witnesses how demonized college was. This was just 7 years ago, folks. Just 7 years ago, they said this in the June 2019 Watchtower, pages 6 and 7, quote, Satan appeals to natural desires. We have a natural desire to learn skills that can help us provide for ourselves and our families. Often, we can gain those skills by attending school and being diligent students. But we must be cautious. The educational system in many countries teaches students not only practical skills, but also human philosophy. Students are encouraged to question the existence of God and to disregard the Bible. They are told that the theory of evolution is the only intelligent explanation for the origin of life. Such teachings are opposed to the wisdom of God. Human philosophy ignores or contradicts Jehovah's righteous standards. It does not nurture the fruitage of God's Spirit, but rather the works of the flesh. It generates pride and arrogance, and the result is that people become lovers of themselves. End quote for a moment. Just want to remind you, this is what they're saying going to college does to you. Back to the quote. These qualities are the opposite of the meek, humble spirit that God's servants are encouraged to have. Some Christians who have pursued university education have had their minds molded by human thinking rather than by God's thinking. End quote. And there it is. Ah, yes. Engineering and even biology. They have a way of attracting Satan and the demons. Why are we surprised? For example, upon attending an engineering course at college, maybe on shipbuilding, a Jehovah's Witness may be exposed to the fact that in an era when hollowed out logs and reed rafts were the extent of all marine transportation, my guy Noah built a vessel so massive and so perfect that you and I now have pet dogs and cats. Never mind that in college you would learn that no ships or vessels anything like an ark would appear anywhere in history again until the mid-19th century AD. Don't get caught up in the facts. Before I could even contemplate such a project, Noah, my guy, would have needed a thorough education in naval architecture and in fields that would not arise for thousands of years after he lived and died. You know, things like physics, calculus, mechanics, and structural analysis. There was absolutely no record of shipbuilding tradition behind him. There was no experienced craftspeople to give him advice on the ark. Where did he learn the framing procedure for such a structure? How could he anticipate the effects of roll, pitch, yaw, and slamming in a rough sea, much less with the animal kingdom on board, sloshing their way through feces and urine? How did he solve the differential equations for bending moment, torque, and stress on the ark? Don't go asking those kind of questions, my people. Don't go asking questions. Not even in college, not even about college, not even about education. Because with such logic, you've clearly been influenced by Satan and the demons and human thinking. And you might remember, these are the same demons that ditched their giant boy babies to drown. And then, for some unexplainable reason, were allowed to fly back and live in Jehovah's house again until 1914. Why exactly? We don't know. We just know that's what Judge Joe Rutherford and the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses says what happens. And by the way, if you question this and you happen to get a higher education or in college, you've clearly been influenced by Satan and other human beings. Young people, God, I know this is a pet subject for me, but I implore you, with this study from last week, if you're bravely here, please think. This entire May 2026 Watchtower study studied in congregations all over the earth last Sunday. If you really pay attention, it just leaves you feeling dumber. This is the education they offer. I guess what we come away with is that nothing beats a well-placed asterisk. An asterisk that will, and I'm sincerely happy for those people, today's young people, that will allow young Jehovah's Witnesses to go to college. So do it. Where I hope that your brains will break free from the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. They gave you an out. It's during a rebrand of their organization, so please take the out. Take it. Go to school if you want to. Pursue something you want to do. As for the rest of us that are too old or just don't want to do it at this age, it always comes back to those 11 men in upstate New York. And wouldn't you know it? When it comes to accountability, they always tell on themselves. It's really something. They always tell on themselves. From the July 2018 Watchtower, page 16, paragraph 19, they had this to say, quote, "While it is true that each of us needs to keep working out his own salvation with fear and trembling, we must remember that Jehovah does not have one rigid, inflexible standard by which he judges us. Rather, the more responsibility we have, the greater our accountability." End quote. These 11 men and the men that came before them on the governing body have greater accountability. And they're accountable for ruining the lives of millions of people over the past century, with much of the proof staring back at them from the seats in their kingdom halls. If you are a younger Jehovah's Witness, please don't make the same mistake. Take advantage of the asterisk. I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be well.